whispering wonder.
The Midnight Library of Forgotten Dreams. They say the library at the edge of town is closed at night. They say the doors are locked, the windows stark, the clock asleep beneath its glass dome. They say a lot of things. But at exactly midnight, when the day exhales and the streets turn silver, a thin line of light appears under the door, like a bookmark in the world, inviting anyone brave enough to open it. Mara didn't think of herself as brave. She thought of herself as the kid who stayed up too late, the kid who forgot her own birthday wish as soon as the candles went out, the kid whose dreams always dissolved by morning. But she also thought of herself as curious, and curiosity can be a kind of courage if you hold it gently. At 11:59, she stood at the library steps with her headphones around her neck and a jittery heart in her chest. The town was silent, except for a distant train and the soft hush of leaves turning their pages in the wind. When the church clock began to chime 12, the library door unlocked itself with a quiet click, as if it had been waiting for her all week. Inside, the air was cool and smelled like rain on paper. Lamps stirred awake one by one, soft golden circles blooming on oak tables, and the rows of books stretched farther than they had in daylight, bending away into a darkness that felt inviting instead of empty. Somewhere beyond the first shelf, a bell chimed, like a teacup touched by a spoon. "Welcome," said a voice. It came from everywhere and nowhere, like a whisper shared between pages. A figure glided out of the shadows, a librarian in a long coat the color of midnight, stitched with thread that glimmered like river light. Moths perched on their shoulders, as if they were paper clips with wings. Mara swallowed. "Hi, I couldn't sleep." "That's what we are for," the librarian replied, smiling with their eyes. "You've come to borrow something you lost." "I lost a book?" Mara asked. "A dream," the librarian said. "Everyone misplaces a few. Some fall behind beds, some curl up under pillows and forget to wake. Some wander off because they think they aren't wanted." They tilted their head. "Yours is filed in the annex of unfinished wishes." The words uncoiled inside Mara like warm tea. "Can I get it back?" "If you can find it," the librarian said. "But the annex is not a hallway. It's a sea." They tapped the desk. A drawer slid open. Inside lay a card stamped with her name, a small brass key shaped like a question mark, and an hourglass no taller than her thumb. The sand inside shimmered slowly. "3 keeps," said the librarian, placing them in Mara's palm. "A finding, a fitting, a forgetting." Mara frowned. "Forgetting?" "To leave, you must forget the door you used. Otherwise, you'll never stop looking back." The librarian turned, and the shelves to Mara's right rearranged themselves with a soft rustle. Where there had been fiction, there was now a corridor of glass cases. Inside each case, a page floated, written in a hand that looked like her own. Lines crossed out, ideas half lit. The corridor breathed with her heartbeat. "Step lightly," the librarian said. "Excitement is allowed. Panic is not." Mara padded down the corridor. The glass misted with her passing. At the end, the floor dropped away into a black shining surface that moved. An indoor sea, ink dark and mirror smooth, stretched to a horizon painted with constellations. Boats bobbed at a narrow dock, skiffs made of bound spines, of folded maps, of music staffs, oars shaped like fountain pens. On the nearest skiff lay a compass that didn't point north, but toward the brightest idea within reach. When Mara picked it up, the needle spun twice, then steadied toward a delicate silver glow far across the water. She climbed into the skiff and pushed off. The boat answered like a patient horse, gliding forward, the oars kissing the surface with the quietest shh, 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 as if the sea were reminding her to breathe. Under the water, shapes moved. Not fish, but letters, words, whole sentences swimming by like schools, curving and reforming. Promises she used to make to herself and then misplace. At first, the water was calm enough that Mara could admire the sky's reflection and the thousand soft lamps that hung there like low stars. But halfway to the silver glow, a wind lifted and ripples skittered toward her. The compass needle trembled. Out from the left, something rose. A wave shaped like a question she hadn't wanted to answer. What if I fail? It leaned over her boat with an edge of foam that looked suspiciously like eraser dust. Mara gripped the oars. Not tonight, she said, surprised by her own voice. The wave blinked and subsided, leaving only tiny punctuation marks, commas, ellipses, spreading outward. Another ripple swelled on the right. What if they laugh? It wasn't as tall, but it was colder. Mara thought of her headphones, of how music keeps a rhythm even when hands shake. She set her strokes to a steady count. In two, out two. The skiff rode up and over. The ripple sighed into a period and sank. Ahead, the silver glow sharpened into an island, small, perfect, ringed with shelves that formed a spiral inward. At the center of the spiral, there stood a reading stand carved from the trunk of a tree that must have grown on a mountain and drunk snowmelt and sunlight. Its surface was bare except for a single book wrapped in soft cloth. Mara moored the skiff and stepped onto the island. Immediately, the shelves began to hum. They weren't empty. They were filled with thin volumes bound in colors she recognized from old pajamas, birthday cards, locker doodles. Each spine bore a title that made her chest ache. Learn the Sky by heart. Start the band. Say it out loud. Build the lantern and follow it. She wanted to read them all, but the compass in her pocket warmed, tugging her onward. At the center, Mara unwrapped the book. It was small, light, and warm as if someone had just been holding it. The cover was blank except for a single embossed symbol, a crescent stitched through with a lightning bolt, moonlight and motion. When she opened it, the pages filled themselves with ink, a memory drawing itself back into being. She saw herself at 7, building forts from blankets and insisting they were castles. She saw herself at 9, standing on a chair to reach the sky with a paintbrush and a jar of water, splashing constellations onto paper taped to her ceiling. She saw herself at 11, humming melodies into her phone at 2 a.m., too shy to show anyone. She saw herself last week, closing a notebook because a voice in her head said not good enough, and then scrolling until her eyes stung. The book made room for a future page too, blank for now, but edged in gold, as if the border itself were excited. The island trembled gently, like a sleeping creature shifting in a dream. From the opposite shore, something approached. Not a person, not exactly a shadow. It was the feeling that made her freeze when someone asked what she wanted. It wore a coat of static and carried scissors for clipping wings. Its voice was a hiss made of sentences she'd heard and swallowed. Too late, too much, too loud, too quiet. Mara's fingers tightened around the little hourglass. The sand inside flowed with unhurried certainty. No faster for fear, no slower for hope. The librarian's moths fluttered through her mind, powdering her thoughts with gentleness. Panic is not allowed, she reminded herself. Excitement is. She turned the hourglass. The hiss paused, as if the soft sparkle of sand distracted it. "You're not the timekeeper," Mara said, and her voice steadied. "I am." The static folded, confused, then tried another approach. It mirrored her posture, her doubts, her late-night spirals. But the book in her hands was warm enough to anchor both palms. She kept one hand on the dream and used the other to pull the brass key from her pocket. The key was shaped like a question, because it unlocked a door only she could name. "What if?" she said, and the static flinched. "What if I try anyway?" The scissors clacked shut on empty air. The static retreated to the shelf edges, crumbling into dust that smelled like old tape. The island steadied. The sea took a deeper breath and exhaled.
Mara looked down. On the first fresh page of the book, ink was appearing in her handwriting. Not a perfect plan, not a flawless schedule. A promise. One small brave thing after school. Record the melody. One verse. Whisper it if I have to. Her throat burned behind her eyes in that way that means you're about to cry and about to laugh at the same time. She closed the book and hugged it to her chest. The cover was no longer blank. It had a title now. Forgotten Dream Number 27. Sing it into the dark until the dark learns the tune. When she reached the skiff, the sea had smoothed itself into velvet. The compass needle pointed toward a new glow, warmer, like morning waiting behind a curtain. She rowed in an easy rhythm, letting the oars write tiny silver parentheses across the water. The waves that had been questions were now agreements, nodding her along. At the dock, the corridor of glass cases didn't feel like a museum of failures anymore. Each page in its case looked like a stepping stone. Some were misspelled, some were messy, all of them were real. The librarian waited by the desk with a cup that steamed very gently. The steam smelled like cinnamon and friche paper. "Did you find it?" they asked. Mara held up the book. "I thought I lost it because it wasn't perfect," she said. "But I think I lost it because I hid it." "Perfection is a coat too heavy for running," the librarian said. They opened a new drawer. Inside, a stamp sat on a velvet pad. The handle was carved into the shape of a moth. "We'll check it out to you." Standard lending policy. You may keep it as long as you remember it. If you forget, we'll be here after midnight. They pressed the stamp to the inside cover. When they lifted it, a design remained, the crescent and the bolt, but now accompanied by a small line of text that looked like it had been written by the building itself. Use in case of wonder. Mara tucked the book into her jacket. She returned the hourglass and the key. "One last thing," the librarian said, placing a finger to their lips. The lamps dimmed with a soft sigh. Shelves eased back into their ordinary places. The sea folded into quiet flooring. "To leave, we'll help you forget the door. Not the library, just the way in. Otherwise, your feet will come here while your life waits somewhere else." They touched the air in front of Mara's forehead. A moth lifted and fluttered once, settling the lightest dust on her thoughts. The memory of the exact handle, exact angle, exact click of the lock drifted backward, replaced by something kinder. A feeling of belonging. The knowledge that midnight always has one more page. "Will I remember you?" Mara asked. The librarian's smile made the lamps glow again. "If you read what you borrow." The clock under the dome cleared its throat and chimed a single silver note. It was still midnight, and also somehow the sort of moment right before dawn. The front doors whispered open. Cool air reached in, with the smell of rain starting somewhere you can't see yet, but can already hear.
Mara stepped out. The town was different only because she was. Streetlights shone like small moons. Her headphones felt light on her neck, as if they too had been carrying a memory and had set it down. She didn't need music to walk home, but she hummed anyway. One bar, then another. Quiet, so the night could sing harmony. At her bedroom window, the curtain breathed in the new wind. She set the book on her desk, opened to the first fresh page, and wrote a line that didn't try to be anything but honest. Then, she slid under the blanket, and the blanket became a boat, and the mattress became a soft sea, and the room drifted with her into that private country where excitement tucks itself into safety and becomes a steady star. She didn't know if morning would be easy. She didn't know if people would understand. She did know, right then, that she was allowed to want something enough to begin, and that beginning could be as small as a whisper and as bright as a library that only opens when the world is quiet enough to listen. Somewhere, very far and very near, a moth closed its wings. The midnight librarian shelved another book under Returned and poured tea for whoever might arrive next. And in the house with the window slightly open and the hum of a new melody drifting into the branches, a teenager fell asleep with her hand resting on a title embossed in moonlight. Sing it into the dark until the dark learns the tune.